Chapter 1171, Today's Fortune. Yang Xinxin walked up the tall steps step by step, then arrived before the main doors of the Earth God's temple. Two tall female guards stood at the door and respectfully opened the tall doors of the main hall for her. "Miss Yang, please." Yang Xinxin had little expression on her face as she stepped into the middle of the main hall. The huge palace was gorgeous and empty. The floor under her feet was the most golden gold bricks. Knocking it would have a metal-like sound, and it was said that the price of each gold brick was no less than the same volume of gold. And when Yang Xinxin raised her head, she saw that far ahead of her, a cool and beautiful girl wearing a black dress was looking at her with a smile on her face. "Yang Xinxin, long time no see." Yang Xinxin nodded. "Long time no see, Guan Longua." Guan Longua waved at Yang Xinxin. Next to her was a modest tea table. She had already prepared black tea and refreshments for Yang Xinxin. Yang Xinxin also nonchalantly walked over and sat across from her. The two elementary school classmates who weren't how familiar but weren't strangers either, sat together again after many years. After the end of the world, I had searched for those friends from before. But most of them were nowhere to be found, and some of them survived. It's just that in my heart, the person I've always missed the most is still you. Guan Longua poured a cup of steaming black tea for Yang Xinxin. Yang Xinxin said faintly, "Oh? Is that so? But there doesn't seem to be much communication between us. I didn't even know I was that important in your heart. You were extraordinarily dazzling at that time, making it hard to forget no matter how long it's been." Guan Longua said with a smile. Yang Xinxin's smile was a little deeper. "It's all in the past, now compared to you, I'm just an ordinary person." The corners of Guan Longua's mouth hooked up imperceptibly. "But it's just the will of heaven." She pinched a piece of tea from the table and gently stuffed it into her mouth, taking a small bite off a piece. "There was a time when I wouldn't have imagined that there would be such a day." Yang Xinxin said, "Yes, nowadays you are the topmost existence in Huashu Kingdom." Guan Longua smiled and shook her head. "Don't mention it. Nowadays, although I have obtained many things, I don't feel happy." As she spoke, she subconsciously rubbed her shoulders. "The burden on top of these shoulders makes me feel too heavy sometimes." Yang Xinxin smiled faintly and did not reply. Guan Longua looked at her exquisitely beautiful doll-like face. "Xinxin, have you gotten the happiness you wanted?" Yang Xinxin thought of Zhang Yi and those family members, and a heartfelt smile appeared at the corner of her mouth. "I'm very happy now." Guan Longua opened her cherry lips and took a deep breath, then tilted her head back to look at the empty and huge ceiling of the Earth God's temple. "I wish I could be as dashing as you. Sometimes I want to do things but I can't." Yang Xinxin's eyes drooped slightly. "You already possess a lofty position of power and the ability to dominate the lives and deaths of others. If you crave for more, wouldn't you be too greedy?" Guan Longua smiled, "But there are times when I feel that there is nothing wrong with being greedy." She looked at Yang Xinxin. From the moment Yang Xinxin stepped through the doors, her eyes never left Yang Xinxin's body. This girl who used to make her look up to her, elegant and haughty like a crystal porcelain doll, was the kind of person she had longed to be for years. The kind of person who was favored by everyone, a flawless genius. The self Guan Longua had once fantasized about. "Xinxin, it's so nice to see you like this now." Yang Xinxin didn't feel anything about Guan Longua's name. She and Guan Longua weren't exactly familiar with each other, and this kind of intimate address was just a reflection of Guan Longua's inner thoughts. Guan Longua thought that she was now strong enough, so she could get everything she wanted. And the essence of this kind of address was a mentality that believed that other people could not refuse their friendliness, as if it was a gift. "Did you find me over this time just to catch up?" Yang Xinxin asked indifferently. Guan Longua blinked. "Isn't it okay?" She suddenly hid a smile. Are you particularly flustered inside because I want to see you?" "Actually, there is no such need. I want to see you, I simply want to see you." She suddenly rested half of her cheeks with the back of her hand, and said with a despondent expression, When you are in a high position, you will indeed have a kind of trouble. No matter what you do, it will cause others to have infinite reveries. It is precisely because of this that I have no friends around me. And only subordinates. Xinxin, can you understand this pain? Yang Xinxin said faintly, don't understand. Guan Longua sighed lightly, that's true. Yang Xinxin once again fell into silence. Although she anticipated Guan Longua's purpose of looking for her, she was not accustomed to greeting others. Seeing this, Guan Longua slightly skimmed her lips and suddenly leaned forward, coming close to Yang Xinxin's face. This action caused Yang Xinxin to frown slightly, her body leaning back slightly. Xinxin, I don't have a single friend around me right now. Otherwise, why don't you come over and accompany me? In this place, whatever you want, I can give it to you. You're a genius, you shouldn't bury your talent. Yang Xinxin stared at Guan Longua and said politely with her mouth, thanks for your kindness. But I'm with everyone now, and I'm living a very happy life. So I haven't considered leaving them. Guan Longua asked rhetorically, but I heard that you are nothing more than an appendage of that Zhang Yi fellow in Tianhai City. He has many people around him, and you are just one of his vassals. Isn't this burying your talent? She narrowed her eyes, a few moments of lethargy in the middle of her eyes, yet there was a flash of sternness. Others may not know you, but I know you. You possess a very terrifying talent, and if you are willing, you can become a very powerful being. Just like me. Yang Xinxin took a sip of black tea. She didn't show any heartfelt emotion towards Guan Longua's words. Instead, she leaned back against the seat with a happy smile on her face. Guan Longua, I am different from you. Me, as long as I can see my brother becoming stronger all the time, my heart is extremely satisfied. Her smile grew stronger as she thought of the years she spent with Zhang Yi, and the thought of watching Zhang Yi become stronger step by step, her expression grew more and more obsessed and morbid. I'm not interested in becoming powerful. I am into the nurturing department. Chapter 1172 Yandere's. Yang Xinxin's words caused Guan Longua's gaze to freeze. You wouldn't like that man called Zhang Yi, right? I do. Yang Xinxin responded lightly, without the slightest hesitation or shy reaction. Guan Longua's black eyes rippled for a while. What's so good about him? But he is just a man who seeks to survive in the cracks and is selfish. Yang Xinxin smiled and shook her head. You will never understand this feeling. In the middle of her mind, a smile grew on her face as she thought of the scene when the two of them met under the Tianqing Academy that was buried in snow. When I look at Brother Zhang Yi being cautious and hard-mouthed about his selfishness, but desperately trying to keep everyone alive and well, a great pleasure arises within me. As she said that, she suddenly placed her hands on her chest, an obsessive smile on her face. It's like a mother watching her child struggling to grow up. That feeling, how fascinating it is. It is this taste that makes me deeply enamored, and so I want to be by his side all the time, to see just how far he can grow. Guan Longua froze for a long time, and her heart trembled in shock. After a long time, she also smiled. Sure enough, we are the same kind of people. Both were the type of girls who were crazy inside. Originally, in Guan Longua's heart, there were many words that she wanted to say to retain Yang Xinxin, hoping to be able to keep Yang Xinxin by her side. Only after hearing these words from Yang Xinxin, she dismissed the idea. Because, she also wanted to keep this lovely and beautiful porcelain doll in front of her by her side and nurture it as a pet. So of course she understood what kind of feelings Yang Xinxin had for Zhang Yi. Guan Longua sat up straight. She smiled as she looked at Yang Xinxin who only had Zhang Yi inside her eyes. It was as if she was looking at her other self. The self that she had once fantasized about inside her eyes. Hey, I want you to stay by my side so badly. She covered her mouth and smiled, her gaze flashing with a touch of playfulness, but right now, I'm more interested in seeing to what extent you're able to train that pet. Not a pet, Yang Xinxin corrected, it is my beloved baby. The conversation between the two Yandere teenage girls would definitely give them the creeps if they were overheard by outsiders. Two teenage girls under the age of 20, both of them surprisingly like to use humans as playthings. The conversation between the two did not involve the past in the slightest. Because of the years that had passed, Yang Xinxin didn't care, and Guan Longua didn't want to rehash them either. Zhang Yi was standing right outside the doors, and trying to force Yang Xinxin to stay by his side was obviously something that was already impossible to do. Guan Longua and Yang Xinxin sat opposite each other drinking tea. After a cup of tea was finished, Yang Xinxin got up and left. The test ended here. It was always impossible for her to ask Guan Longua about her abilities, yet now, she had gotten what she wanted to get. Xinxin, wait a moment. I have a gift for you. Guan Longua fetched a wooden box, then handed it to Yang Xinxin. What is this? Yang Xinxin asked. You can open it and take a look. Guan Longua had a pampered look on her face. This is something I spent a long time making especially for you. Yang Xinxin lowered her head and reached out to open the wooden box. Inside the wooden box quietly lay a doll, carved out of wood, lifelike. It was exactly the likeness of Yang Xinxin. If it was about craftsmanship, this wooden carving had already reached the level of a work of art, with every hairline carved with extreme delicacy. It was evident how much effort Guan Longua had spent on it. There was a red rope wrapped around the body of the wooden sculpture, which looked a bit strange, as it was not a common ribbon used to tie up gifts, but a red hemp rope. This is? Guan Longua smiled, an amulet. If you ever encounter any danger, just untie it. It will be of great use. Yang Xinxin thought about it, reached out and closed the lid, and whispered, thank you. Then she got up, then I'll take my leave first. Guan Longua hid a smile, well, I'm looking forward to our next meeting. Yang Xinxin left the Earth God's temple without the slightest pause in her steps. Guan Longua looked at her back, a strange flush surfacing on her face, and a mesmerized look in her eyes. Ah, she's still as noble and elegant as she was in the past. It's really so tempting to get it. And then take it hard in my arms and play with it so hard. She clasped her hands around her body with the look of a demented girl. But then she remembered something, and her eyes went to the teacup on the table. She stretched out her white right hand to fetch the cup over, and with a slightly red face, she gently kissed it. Zhang Yi waited outside the doors for Yang Xinxin to come out. Shang Daowen was right next to him and smiled as he chatted with Zhang Yi. Your Excellency Chaos, are you satisfied with your stay in Xinjiang in the last few days? Zhang Yi said indifferently, not bad. Xinjiang is worthy of being the capital of the country. It's much more grandiose than the blizzard city in Jiangnan. After you guys got that so-called yuan, it seems to have developed quite well. Shang Daowen laughed, if your Excellency Chaos is willing, you guys can get it as well. As long as one is willing to join in the next operation. I wonder how your Excellency has considered it. Zhang Yi laughed, a good deal. Shang Daowen froze for a moment. This plausible reply seemed like a windy answer, but it skillfully skirted around the issue. Shang Daowen then did not continue to pursue the question. After a while, Yang Xinxin walked out from the middle of the Earth God's temple. Zhang Yi walked over and looked down at her with a smile and asked, did you have a good chat with your old friend? Yang Xinxin nodded, it was fine. Then we will go back first. Zhang Yi said to Shang Daowen. Please take your time. Shang Daowen immediately arranged for someone to send Zhang Yi and Yang Xinxin back to their residence. After going back, Zhang Yi immediately asked Yang Xinxin about the information about Ho Tu. Did you get any useful clues from chatting with her this time? Yang Xinxin nodded, at the very least, we can now know that she is actually very weak. Zhang Yi thought about it and smiled as he nodded in agreement. Yeah, she's strong, but she also has a very clear weakness. It was the unknown that was the most terrifying, but once the veil of mystery was slowly lifted, the shock it brought to people would rapidly decline. The tight security of the Earth God's temple, as well as Shang Daowen's need to be there in person, made one thing clear: Guan Longua's own abilities had a huge flaw. Therefore she needed the protection of others. My guess, the ability she possesses is spellcraft. As long as the conditions for the attainment of a spell are met, it will result in an extremely terrifying killing power. However, she is lacking in this aspect of melee combat. Zhang Yi added, this is not necessarily the case, as we are not certain of the conditions for spellcasting. Perhaps she can cast spells at close range without the use of a medium, it's just that her melee combat ability is definitely not as powerful as long-range spells. That's why someone needs to protect her. Zhang Yi's eyes slowly brightened, that makes sense. Why is it that there are clearly 3 epsilons in the Xinjiang region, yet the 2 Hotu and Xidagarba king are unwilling to leave Xinjiang and go to the Qinling mountain to participate in the operation? It's because Hotu is like the Reaper of Love, although she is powerful, she also has flaws and cannot act at will. Xidagarba king, on the other hand, needs to stay in Xinjiang and protect her as well as the entire Xinjiang city. Chapter 1173 Genius and Opportunity. Zhang Yi and Yang Xinxin had not gone to see Hotu for nothing this time, at least they had gotten a portion of information about Hotu. The curse technique, is it? Law of cause and effect. Zhang Yi rubbed his chin and his gaze snapped. Since it's a weapon of the law of cause and effect, there must be underlying conditions that need to be fulfilled in order to produce results. Yang Xinxin nodded. I remember researching her supernatural abilities when I was in school before. And the props for casting spells were things like hair or fingernails. Zhang Yi's eyes stared at her. If just hair or nails or something like that could fulfill the conditions for casting the spell, then it would be too simple for Xinjiang to hold on to him. After all, people naturally shed around 100 hairs every day. Yang Xinxin shook her head. It won't be that simple. If that's really the case, Xinjiang region would be able to directly override the other 5 regions by relying on her nowadays. After all, that way, the other epsilons will not be a threat in front of Xinjiang. Zhang Yi hugged his arms and pondered seriously, if a medium is needed, then it must be something physical. Hair, fingernails, that sort of thing perhaps. If not, it is flesh and blood. Suddenly, a sentence that Li Changgong had once said to him popped up in the middle of Zhang Yi's mind. Never reveal one's name casually. This was because one's true name contained karma. Names, is that one of the conditions? Zhang Yi subconsciously bit his nails and muttered. Yang Xinxin said quietly, I think Xu Jing must know some more precise information. Not only him, the commanders of the other regions also know more than ordinary people. After all, the Hotu is also one of their means of restraining the top mutants in their respective regions. Zhang Yi rubbed his brow. What a headache. Yang Xinxin laughed lightly. After all, Guan Longua is the underbelly of Xinjiang, and her abilities certainly won't be known so easily. Brother, you actually don't need to worry so much. At the very least, according to the current situation, the conditions for her ability to be exerted are rather harsh. Yang Xinxin thought of her own ability and murmured, even for the law of cause and effect ability, there are differences in the effects on people. It's like my angel of lust, the ability of arrows, the effect will be weakened for characters with strong willpower or mutants with strong spiritual power. Hearing this, Zhang Yi looked at Yang Xinxin and couldn't help but ask, Xinxin, you say, if you were like Guan Longua and became a powerful epsilon, what would your ability be like? Yang Xinxin's obsidian-like eyes flashed with a teasing gaze. Who knows? But right now, my arrows, their influence on people is so much more powerful than it was back then. The arrow of love's control time is also getting longer and longer. Perhaps one day when I really reach that point, I'll be able to make others my slaves completely. A bold idea surfaced in Zhang Yi's mind. If she could really reach that kind of point, perhaps Yang Xinxin could form a legion of mutants that would be absolutely loyal to her. If that were to happen, Yang Xinxin's strength would definitely not be below Guan Longgua's. Zhang Yi took a deep breath. It looks like I'm very lucky to have all of you excellent partners by my side. Among the family's partners, there were a few whose abilities could be considered extraordinary. For example, martial arts sect master Liang Yu, and then Lu Karen and Yang Xinxin, who had developed their powers at a later stage and showed amazing potential. If they grew up, they would become the most important supporting force by Zhang Yi's side. Zhou Qir's doctor ability also completely solved their worries about injuries. Although the other people's abilities seemed to be slightly weaker, there were times when they came in handy, so Zhang Yi did not force everyone to have extremely powerful skills. Therefore, he greatly lamented his good fortune. However, Yang Xinxin did not think so. She walked over to Zhang Yi's side and looked up at him with a look of admiration mixed with a hint of infatuation. "Oh brother, this is not your good fortune. Rather, it's the good fortune of us people. It was only after meeting you that we had the chance to live until now and were able to show our abilities. I've always believed that there is no lack of geniuses in this world, but a lack of opportunities. It's as if Liu Bang, Xiao He and Fan Kuai all came from Pei County, Zhu Yuanzhang and Suda and Chang Yechen all came from Fengyang County." She wiggled the index finger of her right hand, reciting like a history teacher with a quirky gleam in her eyes. "It's not that all outstanding talents in history gathered together, it's just that the people from that place happen to encounter a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to excel." Zhang Yi raised an eyebrow and laughed. "I just gave you guys the chance to utilize your talents. But then again, this might be the survival of the fittest. If you guys weren't extremely good in your own right, you wouldn't have been able to wait for me to show up and would have died under the never-ending extreme cold like the others." With regards to Ho-Tu, Zhang Yi didn't have any good ways to deal with it for the time being. But the good thing was that he was just dwelling in peace, and he didn't have any conflicts with the Xinjiang region. So for a short period of time, according to his style of doing things, he didn't have to worry about being missed by the Ho-Tu. However, this matter was on his mind, and he still told Yang Xinxin to take the time to investigate it properly. "That's something I'll have to go back and look through the canonical books, checking out the various sorceries and blessing spells from ancient times. Perhaps it will be possible to get some clues from them." Zhang Yi hugged his arms. Those messy things in the past weren't the same thing as supernatural powers. Yang Xinxin blinked, but supernatural abilities are born from the heart. Guan Longua's greatest wish in this life is that her curse power truly possesses an extremely powerful force to stop the tragedy in her life. Then this long-cherished wish will definitely be related to the legendary doors. Studying it might yield unexpected gains. Zhang Yi nodded, feeling that Yang Xinxin did have some truth in what she said. "Then you investigate it properly." He slowly narrowed his eyes. "After I return to Blizzard City, I'll go find someone to investigate properly." He wasn't going to look for Zhu Zheng. This was because currently, he was not clear on what exactly Ho-Tu's Hell's Guillotine was using as a triggering medium. And going to find Zhu Zheng to inquire about it would instead indicate that he was showing cowardice in his heart. With Zhu Zheng's cunningness, he definitely wouldn't let go of this opportunity to gain the status of a conversation between the two of them. So asking would be in vain. Zhang Yi sent his thoughts to Deng Yuanbo. Perhaps this bigwig with vast connections in Huashu Kingdom could know something. Chapter 1174, Before Traveling to Qinling Mountain. Earth God's Temple. After Guan Longua sent Yang Xinxin away, an excited smile appeared at the corner of her mouth, her sharp tiger teeth slightly rubbing against the teeth below. "Xinxin, where will you be heading? In this world that has long been in chaos," she said silently in her heart. At this time, Qin Qigong's voice suddenly came to her ears. "Xiao Guan, how is it? Is that friend of yours willing to stay?" "No, it was very cleanly rejected," Guan Longua said. "Oh? Is that so? That's really a bit of a pity. But I'm curious, do you have any special purpose in insisting on meeting this old classmate?" Qin Qigong's tone was rather helpless as he said these words. As the Xinjiang region's biggest secret weapon nowadays, any information on Guan Longua was a secret within a secret. In principle, other than him and a few trusted attendants, no one was allowed to easily approach the Earth God's temple where Guan Longua was located. However, this meeting was strongly requested by Guan Longua, and Qin Qigong had to respect her decision. Guan Longua only replied lightly, "Just wait and see. This friend of mine, she might become even more powerful than chaos in the future." "Oh?" These words caused Qin Qigong to become interested, his tone becoming much more cautious. Capable of becoming even more powerful than chaos? Does it mean that it can be compared to you? Guan Longua laughed. I don't know. Abilities and whatnot are not important to her. I only know that she is a genius, and even more so, a person who is crazy inside. Such a person, no matter what she wants to do, it will become extremely dangerous. She sighed softly as she said this. But right now, she doesn't seem to care about being strong herself, which is a shame. Time quickly came to 7 days later. The time Qin Qigong had left for the representatives of the 5 regions to consider expired. Thus the meeting was also reconvened, and Qin Qigong gathered everyone together, asking them about their final decisions with a smile on his face. And as a result, the East Sea region was naturally unable to attend due to Black Tortoise's personal issues. The representative of the Southwest region, Pa Jigsan, smiled and shook his head, stating that he had reported this matter to the Southwest region's most highly regarded nowadays, chief monk of the Sangha Temple, Yashilang Tai Deji, and the Lord of the Corpse. However, the final result of the discussion was that the tantric sect's power was limited, and there was Brahma watching from the west, so they were unable to send people to participate in the operation. Qin Qigong knows that the Southwest region is a complex issue, and for many years it has been the unity of politics and religion, and after the end of the world, the power of the 4 local Tusi is even greater than unimaginable. So he didn't say much, just said, I can understand. Pa Ji Tusi has worked hard. Pa Jigsan smiled and nodded his head in greeting, then sat aside without saying anything. As for the other few regions, Li Changnong's position was clear to all. He needed a successful operation to solidify his position in the Northwest region. So he was the first to express his willingness to cooperate. On the northeastern side, Han Shanzhua was also relatively quick to agree to cooperate, only for the specific details of the cooperation, he put forward some rather strict requirements. In these, Qin Qigong also said that there was no problem. In the end, everyone's eyes fell on Zhang Yi. Among the representatives of the 5 regions, Zhang Yi was the most special, as the relationship between him and the Jiangnan regional headquarters was not one of affiliation, but of cooperation. Therefore, his attitude was unclear to anyone, and most of the time, Zhang Yi prioritized his personal interests. Your Excellency Chaos, I wonder what your side is thinking. Qin Qigong asked with a sincere expression. Zhang Yi smiled faintly. I have considered this question. If I'm allowed to participate in this operation, I have some concerns that I'll have to ask you all to help me resolve first. Qin Qigong asked curiously, Oh? What concerns do you have? By all means speak. Zhang Yi said indifferently, First is the intelligence. Regarding everything underneath the Qinling mountain range, no one other than you has any intelligence there. If you want me to get involved, you guys must reveal all the information about the underground to me without reservation. Zhang Yi looked deeply at Qin Qigong as he said this. I also want to see the complete image of Zhen Yuanzi, fighting the 2 epsilon-level earth centipedes. Qin Qigong lowered his head in slight contemplation and quickly responded, I can make the call on this. As long as you participate, it will be arranged for you right away. Zhang Yi nodded. Then let's talk about the second point. His eyes looked across the table at Li Changgong, narrowing his eyes slightly. There has been a grudge between Go Chen and I, so it's hard to guarantee that he won't make a move against me when the time comes to act. Zhang Yi would not be teammates with someone he could not trust, that would be too dangerous. 10,000 meters underground in the abyss, they needed to face but 2 white chariot-level mutant beasts. For against 2, the chances of winning were still high. But if someone sneaked up behind them, it would be fatal. Li Changgong's face suddenly changed. Chaos, what do you mean by this? I'm a soldier, it's impossible for me to do such a nasty thing. Li Changgong's voice was loud, he thought that Zhang Yi was insulting him. Zhang Yi said lightly, Oh? Is that so? Maybe that's what you think now. But if after our life and death battle, I am severely injured and dying, there are only the 2 of us around, and if you have a healing medicine in your hand that can save me, will you heal my wounds, or will you watch me die? Li Changgong, Zhang Yi, don't lie. Ask yourself what you think in your heart. Li Changgong's words were immediately choked. The image that Zhang Yi had spoken of unexpectedly surfaced in the middle of his mind. At once, a chill ran down his back and a layer of white-haired sweat unexpectedly rose. It was because he realized with horror that he had hesitated when he put himself in that situation. Backstabbing a friendly army, this was a soldier's greatest shame. But he still had a great resentment towards Zhang Yi, a resentment that he would normally suppress, but when no one was around, he might not be able to control the demon in his heart. Zhang Yi saw his hesitation and could not help but sneer. "You see." Li Changgong came back to his senses and hurriedly explained, "I would never do something like that. Guaranteed by the honor of my family." Qin Shigong crossed his arms on the table and smiled, saying, "Human nature is inherently unable to be tested. It's like a good person, if he needs money badly and sees a piece of gold in a remote and uninhabited wilderness, he will have the urge to keep it for himself. Therefore, it's pointless to use morality to constrain." Qin Shigong suddenly grimaced. "Let's just use discipline. Here, I, Qin Shigong, can issue a statement in my capacity as Supreme Commander of the Xinjiang region. If anyone dares to take action against an ally during an operation, I, Xinjiang, will surely leave no stone unturned in my crusade against them and make their evil deeds known to the world. At the same time, I also hope that the other regions involved in the operation will combine their efforts, and the three will strike together." Chapter 1175, Pa Jigsawn's Invitation. Qin Shigong's proposal was supported by the crowd. After all, no one wanted to have someone stab them in the back while they were fighting. In fact, not only was Zhang Yi worried, Li Changgong likewise had this concern. Therefore, the crowd did not hesitate to express their approval. Zhang Yi glanced at Li Changgong and said indifferently, "I'll personally add one more item. I still have the images of that day's battle in my possession, and if I find out that you're making small moves behind your back, I guarantee that the images will be spread all over the world." Li Changgong's face darkened a bit. "Humph. If I really did that kind of thing, do whatever you want." Now, the four major districts had finally reached an agreement. Together, they would participate in the mission of the Qinling Mountain Abyss, and after the matter was completed, each of the other three would be able to take 10% of the yuan or resources. In addition, the Xinjiang region must share all the information about the underground of Qinling Mountain with the other three regions without reservation. As for the East Sea region and Southwest region, they were naturally not qualified to know. The smile on Qin Shigong's face relaxed considerably when he saw that an agreement had been reached. "In this battle we are only allowed to win but not lose, with the four major regions joining forces and four top Epsilon powerhouses dealing with the two Epsilon Earth centipedes, the chances of winning are quite high. However, in addition to the two Epsilon centipede queen and king insects underground, there are also an extremely terrifying number of Earth centipedes. That's why each region needs to send some strong mutants to enter the underground together and be responsible for clearing out these small monsters. In principle, Delta-level mutant creatures could barely pose a threat to the combat-oriented Epsilon. However, the number of Earth centipedes in the Abyss was simply too many, and among them there were also existences whose strength was not weaker than the captain level. More ants could still bite an elephant, even if the four Epsilons joined forces. If they were to fight in the underground, it would be very difficult to deal with two Earth centipedes and a sea of ordinary alien insects at the same time. Since they were going to fight, they naturally had to be well prepared. Mutant Qin Shigong said, "My suggestion, other than some supernaturals with special abilities, supernaturals with an ability index of 9,000 points or less are not recommended to go. They will be responsible for clearing the small monsters, and the four of you will directly hunt the two beast-type level mutant beasts." This was something that the crowd did not have any opinions on. Only Zhang Yi raised an eyebrow as he thought about this. The overall strength of Jiangnan region was a backward existence among the 6 regions. Coupled with the previous few operations, the number of captain-level mutants was somewhat low. Nowadays, it wouldn't make much sense to draw from Blizzard City again. In that case, there was a need to involve his partners in this operation. "I can't protect them for the rest of their lives after all, I need to let them follow me and grow up together. After thinking for a moment, Zhang Yi decided to let Liang Yu, Flower and even Fatty Su participate in the operation. Only then would they be able to grow up quickly instead of only being able to rely on Zhang Yi. Especially Flower and Liang Yu, they were the standard martial arts fighting faction and needed to grow up in the midst of battles. Qin Qigong left them another 3 days to study the information and prepare the manpower as well as the equipment for the operation. 3 days later, we will officially head to the Qinling Mountain. Then we'll rendezvous with Jin Yuanzi. Qin Qigong said. The crowd agreed, and without eating much of the meal, they left the table one after another, going back to prepare for the mission afterward. After leaving the conference hall, snow was drifting outside, and the huge and empty square was covered with thin snow. Zhang Yi stepped into the snow and walked towards the front step by step. Just as he was about to walk down the alabaster steps, a voice with a thick accent suddenly came from behind him. Your Excellency Chaos, please stay. Zhang Yi knew it was Pa Jigsaw as soon as he heard it. He turned back and asked with a smile, Pa Jitusi, what is it? During the time he was in Xinjiang, Zhang Yi was not idle, taking his family around Xinjiang and doing some other business halfway through. As for Pa Jigsaw and Han Zhanzhua, both of them had actually extended invitations to Zhang Yi to have a drink and chat with him. The meal at Pa Jitusi's house was still fresh in Zhang Yi's mind. Because he had a very good cook, the food he made was very memorable to Zhang Yi. Pa Jigsaw smiled as he walked up to Zhang Yi. His obese body gave off a comical feeling of not falling over, and it was easy for people to feel close to him. It's nothing special, it's just that I know Your Excellency at first sight, and I very much hope to become best friends with you. Pa Jigsaw nodded slightly. Zhang Yi's eyes widened slightly before he smiled. That would be my honor. Pa Jigsaw said, it is my regret that we came in haste and did not prepare the most sumptuous feast for you. When you return, allow me to host a reception for you, and the two of us will drink freely. I wonder what Your Excellency would like to do. Zhang Yi looked at the patriarch of the second family of the southwest region in front of him and said in his heart, he's trying to strike a good relationship with me? There was nothing wrong with that. This was how the human world worked. Who wouldn't want to form a deep friendship with an Epsilon powerhouse? Zhang Yi nodded and was about to agree. However, on second thought, he suddenly laughed and said, this time when we go over, I don't know how long it will take for us to come back. When you put it that way, it is hard to say that we will be back in time. It's not like the southwest region was involved in this operation, so staying here could only be poking around. Pa Jigsaw smiled and nodded. Unfortunately, Chief Monk and Undertaker did not agree to participate in this operation. But we are still in awe of the mysterious Qinling Mountain. It is like our vast Great Snow Mountain in the southwest, both with mysterious legends and sacred symbols. Zhang Yi had heard of the Great Snow Mountain, which was one of the main peaks of the Kunlun Mountains, located on top of the plateau in the southwest region. Since ancient times, the Great Snow Mountain had been a place of pilgrimage for Tantric sect members, and there were countless legends and stories throughout history. It had even attracted countless people from home and abroad to make pilgrimages there to worship all year round, and there were even people who said that their souls could be saved after arriving at the Great Snow Mountain. Zhang Yi didn't think much of it and just took it as a polite statement from Pa Jigsaw. That's good. When I come back, be sure to let me taste the most authentic wine and food from your snowy plateau. Zhang Yi said with a smile. Pa Jigsaw nodded and placed his right hand in front of his chest. I am here to wish Your Excellency good luck in martial arts. Zhang Yi nodded. Many thanks, then let's share a drink when we triumph. This little episode was not something that Zhang Yi had placed much on his mind. It was only treated as a very ordinary socialization. He turned around and stepped through the snow towards the doors, but he did not notice that behind him, Pa Jigsaw was staring at his back, revealing deep thoughts amongst his small, squinting eyes. This strange commodity is also available.